Keith, you rolling?
I'm rolling.
Okay, rolling.
Well, firstly, John, thank you so much for doing this interview.
Thank you.
I mean, I don't really know where to start. It's such a big subject, but there are 7 billion people on the planet, unbridled consumption. Where do you think we're heading?
Where are we headed? Well, we're headed in a direction that we're going to learn some lessons in a very dynamic way about how life is not sustainable and the quality of life is not going up. It's probably going down. And at some point in time, people are going to have to realize that they have a choice in that.
What choice are you suggesting that they have? Because other people we've spoken to are saying, look, there's going to be a catastrophic event and it's not looking good.
Well, with children, probably all children go through the same process. Parents can't stop children from going after what they're interested in. And I suppose that nature can't stop us from going after what we're interested in. So the lessons come, and the lessons that are going to be learned are around how do we get along with each other? How do we treat the planet? What's the quality of life that we're experiencing? And is it going to be sustainable for other, future generations? I mean, we have a responsibility to not only take care of our children and ourselves, but to leave the planet maybe a better than we found it. And so, for me, part of that process is that we have to be able to consider the others involved and not just ourselves.
What others?
Well, I mean, if we look at television and we go after, the normal commercials, it's all about you.
Me, myself, I.
Exactly. And that can only go so far. And when we really step back and take a bigger picture of, where we've been and learn some lessons from where we've been, that's how we grow. That's how we mature. That's how we evolve. And so maybe what's in our future is some lessons that are going to teach us in a dynamic way about, what works and what doesn't work in terms of not only personally, but for the population and for the planet.
What do you actually mean?
What do I actually mean? Well,
You sound to me like you're giving me a kind of soft version. We're going to learn some lessons. But what do you really mean?
Well, there's a large oil spill going on in Mexico right now, isn't there? And there doesn't seem to be any big hurry in getting it stopped. Well, at some point in time, that's a cataclysmic or a catastrophic event, and it's going to have an impact. It's going to have a massive impact, especially on those people that are right there in those states that are being impacted. But these things have been happening with more frequency and with more intensity as we go by year after year. I mean, there was 250,000 people wiped out in a tsunami, so it doesn't take long for nature to move, and when it moves in seconds, and the effects can be profound.
You're talking about a succession of disasters that have been happening around the world.
Well, I would say that if you were to look at the rate of earthquakes, if you were to look at the rate of, massive storms, earth changes, all of that, it's apparent. I mean, you can document it. You don't have to go very far to see what's been happening. And if you look at the past 5 years and move that forward, I mean, just look in the direction that that's taking us. It seems to be increasing. It seems to be intensifying. And if that's the case, how long is it going to be before we as a humanity realize, wow, that could have some massive effects on us? It's nice when it happens to somebody else, but when it comes to our own state, to our own city, to our own country, that's when all of a sudden we go, hey, something's got to happen.
Do you think these disasters or catastrophes are linked?
Is nature linked?
Well, I guess it's linked, but do you think there is some sort of warning going on here? to the human race.
Yeah, I sense that the global warming, global warning, that's what that's about. I mean, even whether it's true or not, as they're perceiving it to be, certainly it is a warning, isn't it? Global warming, the discussion of global warming, isn't that a warning? And so, do people heed the warning? And what happens if you don't heed the warning? You know, that's when the big lessons come. And I don't see that humanity's any different than children learning. We as a humanity are learning, and eventually we're going to have to figure it out. That there might be a better way of going about it.
Figure what out?
Well, that a system that's built on poverty, where 85% of the population lives at a poverty level, where countries decide that they're going to, decide, their conflicts by nuclear activity. I mean, that's not a very intelligent way of going about it. And so if we haven't learned from World War I or World War II, and if we're still solving things with the same mentality, it's not going to resolve it. We have to pick a completely different way to solve these problems. And maybe that's what nature is moving us towards, giving us an impetus.
Do you believe nature's trying to tell us something?
Yes.
What?
Well, probably to live in harmony, to work together, to be more cooperative. I mean, when there's disasters, don't people cooperate more? Don't they collaborate more? They don't say what country you're from, what color you are. They just say, hey, pass the sandbag.
You've also talked about these disasters and there's catastrophes, almost like the world saying, have you got it? Do you understand what's going on here?
Yes.
Or just keep serving them up.
Yes.
How do you explain that side of things?
Well, nature's a system, and when we look at how nature works, it has a beginning and an end. It has 4 seasons. And I believe that whatever is true in the micro is true in the macro. So whatever's happening with nature, nature's giving us some feedback as to how we doing, where are we going, or perhaps maybe this is the direction we're going. So when you're out in a sailboat, I mean, there's a lot of Kiwis that sail. Don't they check out the weather? Don't they check out the sky and, kind of forecast based on what the weather's been, where they're going to travel and how they're going to travel? Well, the planet's probably no different than that we as a species, even though we're not working as a collective yet, that we certainly have enough data to realize that are we moving in the right direction? Does this feel good? Is this going to be sustainable? And will this be good for future generations? What will they have when we're complete?
So you think that if there's a disaster, it's almost like we're getting a warning. Are you ready? Have you got it?
Yeah. And along with the disasters, there's also, shifts that are happening within people personally. There's shifts that are happening, from past experiences that are like over in Iraq. There's a lot of experience that's come out of that's changed people's lives. And so people are evolving. Hopefully the population is evolving. And as we evolve, maybe Earth is kind of like a school. We're moving from middle school to high school to college to university, and maybe we're being moved that way, and that we are meant to be evolving through all these processes, and through these processes we're learning and we're making choices that improve the potential for the future.
But what are the cold hard facts of it all?
What are the cold hard facts of it all?
Because we've talked quite a bit about, how it all could be nice and we all need to, basically hold hands and be a bit more community minded.
Yes.
But the cold hard facts for a lot of people are that, there's a catastrophe, a global catastrophe is coming, and none of us are going to be ready because we've spent far too much of our life, stuck in a capitalistic model
Yeah.
in a self-serving way.